Hello everyone, DM Gashbad here. We are going to finish up round 3 of our Warhammer Fantasy Battles 8th edition escalation campaign. We are calling this thing Deathfang Valley. You may have already seen 2 rounds before this. If you have, congratulations. This is turning into a bit of a long haul here, but thank you for sticking with me. I've played 2 games already. This final game is actually going to be a rematch against the Tomb Kings player. We had a little extra time. The Tomb Kings player was looking if he can't improve his record a little bit, get a win or a draw. I was thinking, oh, if I play again, maybe I can hold on to that tower in the middle and maybe get a couple bonus points above what I got in the first game. So we both had something to gain from this. And the Tomb Kings player wanted to try out light magic, so that's going to be different. You're looking at the army that I've used before, so I'm just going to go over that really quickly. It's 600 points this round. I have got 2 fell bats, that's Bunny and Kindling. I have the Doomed Hunters. Those are my 11 skeletons with Champion and Musician. Up there in the front, that's Ethrak Crowfather, my level 2 Necromancer with the Ruby Ring of Ruin. To the back and to the right, I have the Tomb Guardians. Those are my Crypt Horrors, 3 of them. And up front to the right, we have the Dwellers Beyond. Those are 24 Crypt Ghouls with Aghast. My opponent is also using the same army as before. Here's a shot of them at the top. So he has got 3 Tomb King chariots with full command. In the center, he has got 15 skeleton warriors with just a standard. In that unit, there is also his Lich Priest. That's his general. You can do that at low points values. So he is a level 2 Lich Priest with the Ruby Ring of Ruin as well. Digging around below the battlefield, he has a Tomb Scorpion and 3 Tomb Swarms. So again, this is the Wizard's Tower scenario, a custom scenario written by one of our players who set up the campaign. If you want to see all the rules for that, it is in a link in the show notes. I don't really want to go into too much detail because I've already gone over the scenario-specific rules twice already. So just really quickly, it's like the Watchtower from the Warhammer Fantasy Rulebook. Whoever ends the game with a unit in the tower wins. Anything else is going to be a draw. There's a random game length, so at the end of round 3, you roll a d6. On a 6, the game ends. At the end of round 4, you roll a d6. On a 5, the game ends, and so on and so forth. We have 3 ordinary pieces of terrain in addition to the Wizard's Tower, which is in the middle, which if you remember, if you've got a wizard within so many inches, it gives you the Lore Master ability. And this is the most ordinary battlefield that we've rolled up so far. This is very much a standard Warhammer fantasy table. You almost couldn't get more generic than this. We have a regular mysterious wood up there in the upper left. Again, my opponent put it there because he does not want to have my guys hanging out in the forest where his Tomb King's chariots have to take dangerous terrain tests in order to get them. We have an ordinary building off there on the right. I like buildings. There's a lot of things that infantry units can do with buildings, and having 2 of them in the center of the table gives some of my blocks a lot of options. And we have an ordinary hill sort of off there on the right as well. Because this game happened a long time ago, I have a really hard time remembering which spells I actually ended up with. I'm thinking that my wizard rolled up Invocation of Nehek and Van Hell's Dance Macabre, but again, because we can have the Lore Master attribute, which means we get all the spells from our lore if we're in control of the tower. It's really hard looking back on this to see when we had control of the tower when we're using our basic spells. I don't think it's really going to matter that much. I'm going to tell you the spells that we cast, and one way or the other, they got cast. So my opponent gets the first turn, and he's going to just cautiously move up a bit. Now remember, these are Tomb Kings, they're not vampire counts, they don't get to march. So he's going to shuffle forward. His skeletons are going to go straight towards that building, both because they might want to occupy that at some point, and also because it does kind of protect them against the superior combat troops of my vampire counts. And he's going to swing his chariots about on the left-hand side. He's got a nice clear battlefield on that side, so that's good chariot territory right now. It is his magic phase, and his Lich Priest has uncontested control over the Wizard's Tower, so he's going to get Lore Master, and he's going to, now remember, he has got light magic, so he is going to start off with the Burning Gaze, and that goes through on the Crypt Horrors, so they're going to lose 2 wounds, and those are flaming attacks, so they're going to lose their regen for the rest of the round. And then he goes and he casts Banishment on them. Oh, can't stop that, and it's going to cause 4 wounds, and those Crypt Horrors, really my best answer to those chariots. They're really hurt now. They've lost 2 of their 3 guys. So then it goes on to my turn, and so I can't do my normal thing of just sending my Crypt Horrors straight in front of those chariots and expecting them to absorb all the damage and beat up the chariots later. So I actually kind of pivot a little bit. My left flank drops back, they just shuffle back, and I really want to keep those Crypt Horrors away because I want to regrow them at a later point, while my Fellbats and my Ghouls advance forward because of course they're not threatened by those Skeleton Warriors, and of course my Crypt Ghouls with the Necromancer in there, they want to get inside that building as fast as as possible. In my magic phase, everything is shut down except for the Van Hale's Danse Macabre, which I use to motivate those crypt ghouls and the necromancer into the tower. So I have control of that. That's going to get me some of those bonus points, and it's going to make it really hard for my opponent to dislodge me. It is my opponent's turn, and I have not given those chariots a lot of really good charges. I believe I kept the crypt horrors completely out of the charge range of the chariots, and the skeleton warriors may just barely be in there, or they might actually be out. Either way, he doesn't want to risk a charge and get countercharged in response, because chariots don't like that. So he's just slightly pivoted his chariots there, going to take some pot shots with their bows. The bows don't do anything, but he does go on to his magic phase, and he gets the Ruby Ring of Ruin to go through. The Ruby Ring does put 1 wound on the crypt horrors, so that's not too bad, but it does mean that they lose their regen for the rest of the round. And then he casts Net of Amentek on my ghoul unit. So that's a bit rough. Net of Amentek is a hex spell, and it means that whenever I try to move, shoot, or cast a spell, I have to roll a strength check. And if I fail, I take d6 strength 4 hits, and because I am undead, that's actually going to become 2d6 strength 4 hits. So my strength is 3, so I've got a 50-50 chance of failing that. I don't really want to move anywhere, but of course my wizard is here, and I really would like to cast spells, so this spell puts me in a bit of a tough position. So I am going to call on Bunyan Kindling to go save me from this situation. So I have my Fellbats kind of creeping around on the right-hand side of the table. They can see that skeleton unit. They're still in the front arc. So I'm going to actually declare a charge with those 2 Fellbats, and I'm going to go on a kamikaze suicide run into that Lich Priest. I'm going to try and kill him. The Fellbats are not great at combat, but between them they have 4 strength 3 attacks, and they're gonna go first, I believe, and so it might not work out too badly. If I can kill them, that's fantastic. Probably they're just gonna die, but I think it's worth the shot. Otherwise, my undead just kind of shuffle around a little bit, give those chariots something to think about, set up counter charges if he goes in there or that kind of thing. So I risk the Net of Amentek, and I do manage to pass my strength check. So I managed to get a boosted Invocation of Nehekov, which raises back a bunch of wounds on those crypt horrors. So I'm going to get 4 wounds back, and so 2 of them spring back up, and all of a sudden that flank's looking a lot better. But we go on to the hand-to-hand combat phase. And Bunyan Kindling, you failed me. They swoop in and they try to drain that Lich Priest of blood, but surprise, doesn't have any. It's just dust, and they are truly disappointed. They don't cause a single wound, and they both die in the combat phase. But if this is a contest, my opponent is definitely trying to make sure that he is in the running for most unlucky player. He goes to summon his Tomb Scorpion, see if that thing burrows up, and sure enough, it comes on. So he rolls, he doesn't roll a misfire, it's going to come on, but it does scatter a little bit. The weird thing is that it goes and it scatters right between my crypt horrors and my skeletons. Not on one of those units, but right in the gap in between it. So if the thing burrows up on one of those units, then it counts as a charge. If it burrows up in a place that it can't actually be placed, and it can't be placed in contact with a unit if it doesn't burrow right up underneath it, then it actually just counts as being destroyed. So he managed to pick like the one place on this battlefield that this scorpion could come up and then just instantly die, but I guess that's what it does. It starts crawling up under the earth, and these 2 units just see the thing, and it's all confused because it thought it was going to come up behind them. And anyway, they just turn around and just smash its little bug brains. So that was yeah, my opponent does not roll great for these tunneling from below things. It is a rough random table. And the Tomb Swarms don't help because they just refuse to show up altogether. He can try again next round. The rest of his troops don't really move. He's not really enthusiastic about rushing those chariots in to get stomped on by both my units if he fails that charge, and he certainly doesn't want to charge his skeletons into those ghouls because they're just going to tear him apart. And of course, those chariots aren't going to charge that tower at all. So he's just holding back and hoping that his light magic is going to create an opening later on. And sure enough, he does start off with Burning Gaze, and that's going to go and pick off one of those newly raised crypt horrors. And the ruby ring is going to fire into the tower itself, and it is going to burn a single ghoul to death. So I am in much the same position. Right now I'm winning the game. All I have to do is keep control of that tower. I don't have to do anything else, so I am happy with where I am. I don't need to go chase those chariots. I don't need to try and go chase down that skeleton unit. I'm just going to stay right here, and I'm going to use my magic too. I'm going to throw my ruby ring. I'm going to put 1 wound on the chariots. The rest of the spells either fail to cast or are dispelled, and I am happy doing that. But unfortunately, with that is the end of round 3. We roll the d6, and wouldn't you know, it again comes up a 6. So the game ends. It is the exact same result as last time. My opponent has lost. I have won. I've only held the tower for 2 rounds. So I only get 2 bonus victories. It doesn't actually get us anywhere except like more dead troops. But we kind of feel that was a little bit of an unsatisfactory end, so we decide, hey, let's keep playing. Like, the results stand. Like, as far as the campaign results go and the lore points and all that, you know, this is what happened. But we are going to continue playing to see what would occur if the game had continued on. So it is my opponent's turn, and finally the tomb swarms get with the program, and they land right where he wants them to, right in front of those crypt horrors and the skeletons. Now he has something to screen his approach, so he's going to go and he's going to advance those chariots, and he's really going to start to put the pressure on. Again, he fires off his spells. I managed to shut down everything except the Ruby Ring of Ruin, which again is going to cause 1 wound to my poor picked on crypt horrors. Alright, it is my turn, and I just can't sit around waiting for those tomb swarms to eat who they want to eat, so both of my units go in there, the crypt horrors and the skeletons. In my magic phase, I successfully cast Van Hell's Dance Macabre on the crypt horrors. That's going to give them rerolls to hit, and of course they have poisoned attacks, so that could really help. And it's going to cure that one wound that was burnt off one of my guys from the Ruby Ring of Ruin in my opponent's magic phase. So the vampire lore lets me heal a wound on a multi-wound model after a successful casting. So, after the close combat round, my horrors actually roll really, really badly. They don't do much to those tomb swarms at all, and in fact, the swarms go and put 2 wounds on the horrors themselves. Thankfully, my skeletons are much more with the program, and between that and the charging and the static combat res, we managed to kill off all the swarms. So the crypt horrors go and overrun because I would really like them to not be in the charge arc of the chariots. I don't think the skeletons have that option. I think that they are going to eat a charge from those chariots one way or the other. So I just reform them. I overrun with the horrors, trying to get them out of that charge arc. I don't roll far enough. And so, yeah, I think we're going to have a big vehicular assault coming into the flank of those horrors next round. And yeah, sure enough, that's what happens. And not only that, but the Lich Priest has decided that magic is not going to decide this thing. He needs to get involved personally, and so he sends his skeleton unit into the ghoul bunker. Now, my opponent has a plan, but it does require some rolls to go his way. First off, he does take control of the wizard's tower, so he has his full complement of spells, and he gets enough dice to throw a lot of stuff at what he needs. First off, he is going to cast Speed of Light and Time Warp on his skeletons, so now they are a much scarier group to face, and so he is actually looking at causing some real harm in that close combat phase with those skeletons, and see if that can't dislodge those ghouls from the tower. But first, we're going to do the chariot combat, and sure enough, they roll in and just run straight over my poor Tomb Guardians. They smash them both, they don't take any damage in return, and they reform to face the skeletons. The skeletons are going to charge in. They're going to cause enough damage between their attacks and crumbling to polish off 8 of my ghouls, which is a pretty good result. It could be worse. I've still got a fair amount left. And so they're going to back off away. They're going to get ready for another assault. And I survived that, so it's not going too badly. That did definitely hurt. I didn't cause any damage to him, which is a real shame. And of course, he doesn't have to risk his Lich Priest. What he really wants to do is he wants to kill enough of my ghouls so that when he assaults, I have to put the Necromancer in the combat. And so that'll leave him vulnerable to getting chopped up by those angry skeletons. So it is my turn, and I can't just sit around with those skeletons and wait for the chariots to run them over like they did the crypt horrors. So in they go. They're going to charge into the front of those skeleton chariots and see if they can't slowly chop them away. Well, this is a real shame because I don't get any spells off. I really need to start doing some healing or some blasting or something, but nothing goes through this round. And the close combat phase doesn't really go much better. The chariots are going to take 1 wound, and the skeletons are going to get smashed for 5 when all's said and done. So that probably went about as well as one would expect. Really, the there weren't a whole lot of great options for those skeletons, but yeah, they're not going to last too long against those things. Hopefully they can drag one of them down before they finally get taken off the table. So we're continuing to roll for the random game length, and the roll to end the game doesn't come up, so it's going to go on another round. The skeletons are going to charge the tower again. They're going to try the exact same trick they did before. He's not going to get both those spells off this time, though. He only gets Light of Battle off, so that's going to help those ghouls quite a bit. They're not going to have quite such an uphill combat. In the close combat phase, the skeletons are picking up a little bit. They take 2 wounds off the chariots. The skeletons, though, are going to take another 5 wounds between the attacks and crumbling. That's just going to leave the champion there boldly holding up this group to give my necromancer more time to ransack this library. And the skeletons are still doing really well. They polish off 5 more ghouls. That hurts. I'm down quite a bit now, and they only lose 1 skeleton in return. So this is really not going the ghouls' way. It is my turn. I'm just trying to hold on with my troops, just keep possession of that wizard's tower, and see if the game will end with me in possession of it before I get picked off by these light-enhanced skeletons and these marauding chariots. I don't manage to get any spells off again, so everything's shut down there. And of course, in the close combat phase, my poor lonely skeleton, he doesn't manage to kill all those chariots single-handedly. He just gets stomped on by the skeleton horsemen, and we roll the d6 to see if the game ends, and there it goes, and it ends. And so that came about when we wanted to. We have more or less exhausted all of our troops. The ghouls still have a fair number left in that building. But they were looking a little ragged towards the end. But still, you know, how likely is it that my opponent's going to keep getting these light enhancements before his Lich Priest just blows himself up doing this sort of thing? Anyway, we were both satisfied with that conclusion. It was a lot bloodier than if the game had ended like on turn 3. But of course, it doesn't really count. So all those lore points that I would have been accumulating for holding on to the Wizard's Tower all those rounds, I don't actually get those. Still, it is a win. It was a pretty fun battle. I think looking back on this, if I had, I still kind of had the mindset that blowing up these undead troops, they're still just going to grow themselves back. But of course, my opponent had light magic, so they can't do that. So I knew he was blasting me, and I knew I had to just live with that. But if I had really thought about him not coming back, I probably would have thrown more dice at some of my blasty spells, because a lot of them are just like, oh, I'll throw 2 dice at the ruby ring, or I'll just save it to the end and see what dice I have left over, and if I get it, fine. If I don't, I don't. Whereas if I kind of concentrated on those, made those the priority over some of the Van Hells and stuff like that, the invocations, the game might have gone a little bit better, because putting a couple of wounds on those chariots early on would have really helped, reducing the strength of that light-infused skeleton unit, which kind of turned into a bit of a buzzsaw there towards the end. If I had taken a chunk out of them, then maybe that would have been a better strategy. I'll think about that next time, because I think my opponent did like using the light magic, so I wouldn't be surprised if he sticks with that in the near future. Anyway, thanks for watching. The next round will happen sometime in December, so you get the battle report sometime after that. And again, thanks for sticking with this. Well, let's see, this is the end of round 3. We have 4 or 5. We have 2 more rounds, and then the big mega battle at the end. And so hopefully you'll get to see that in the new year, and I will see you on the next one.